Hello everyone and welcome back to the Smogon YouTube channel. This is Gold Mason back once again with Excal. We're here to cover the Week 3 set between Crucify and Groudon. How you doing, Excal?
I'm good, Mason. What's up, guys? Nice to be back here, looking over a pretty exciting battle here.
Yeah, very exciting indeed. We've got Groudon from the Congregation of the Classiest. He is doing pretty well this SPL, I think.
He is actually 2-0, and he was slated to be out of the 10 players, the last place in the power rankings, mainly due to inexperience relative to the other people in this pool. But yeah, he so far having one of the best starts, along with BKC is the only 2-0 player.
Epic. And then we've got Crucify from the Sharks on the other side. No slouch in either.
Absolutely not.
I did not know that Crucify was on the Sharks for a previous season too.
Yeah, he made finals, I believe, 2 years ago with the Sharks, something like that. I think he skipped an SPL or two, but I think he made SPL finals in the 2022 season, or maybe 2023, one of those. And he was a black-white player. This is his first time playing DPP in SPL. He has had some experiences, mainly in the Smogon Classic, beating out ABR and Solon most recently in the Classic playoffs before losing to M-Dragon, all in DPP as well. So he's definitely building some, pretty interesting teams, has some original takes on the tier. It's interesting to see that for sure from a player who plays, a lot of old gens and has made finals of Smogon Classic several years ago. So he's a pretty exciting player to be watching in this pool. It's always nice to see players take their own spin on things as opposed to recycling the same teams that we've seen over and over again. So I kind of deemed Crucify as a threat to the pool, despite placing him 7th out of 10th in just power rankings, because he hasn't played nearly as much DPP as other starters. So one-on-one start, had a tough week 1 into BKC. That was a very brutal match. But he really stepped it up week 2 and beat Malekith in dominant fashion, which forced him to stop playing SPL altogether and quit his season, which was a little disappointing, but nonetheless, this is a pretty interesting match up against Groudon, both of them kind of having some nice momentum to start the season. So should be a pretty good battle.
That is a Kingdra lead.
Yeah, that's pretty interesting for sure. Jirachi lead is a very common lead. It can do all sorts of different things. It can be a defensive set. It can be a trick set. It'll, trick and then set up stealth rocks after locking them in. So, for example, if you have an Azelf and they're trying to deny stealth rocks from Jirachi, they taunt on the trick and then they're locked on the taunt. So Jirachi can use U-turn and they don't get their stealth rocks early. It's really disruptive to these anti-hazard leads where they try to taunt and then set up their own hazards. So it's a really nice set to have on Jirachi, coupled with the fact that it can mask its set and can be so many different things. As one of the best Pokemon in the metagame, arguably the best, Jirachi is just one of those leads that you can't really prepare for every single set. Whereas Kingdra is a very uncommon lead. Usually they're choice specs lead, and they're just trying to shoot out some really powerful water attacks. Might be Life Orb as well, depending on the set. It's pretty uncommon, but they usually lean specially oriented with those really strong hydro pumps. Kingdra is not that strong with the 95 base special attack and base attack, so it really needs that power boost from Life Orb or choice specs typically to really dent teams. We've seen some weird Kingdras in the past, but they usually don't do the job as well as an offensive Life Orb or choice specs, so it's probably going to be one of those, and I'm sure Groudon will be clicking hydro pump, and we're going to have to see what Crucify clicks here. If he is some sort of trick set, then Kingdra is going to discourage being clicking trick, because you don't want to trick and then receive a choice specs or whatever, and then you have to switch Jirachi out. Because in DPP, if you trick, you're actually locked on a trick if they have a choice item. Unlike in a future gen like Black White, where if you trick something that has choice scarf, then you can click whatever you want again. So you have to be really careful when you use trick, because if you trick into the wrong Pokemon, it's really consequential in this generation. So Crucify is not incentivized to click trick. Maybe he's defensive though, and maybe he's going to go for some sort of body slam, but we'll just have to see how this goes.
Heatran on a U-turn.
Yeah, so Groudon is straight switching out, which is really interesting. Probably just didn't want to get body slammed. That's the power of Jirachi lead. You just don't know what it's going to do, and Groudon didn't want to play offensively, and we don't really know what that Kingdra is yet. Maybe if it's some sort of weird physical set, it would make more sense to switch out. But if he was a specially oriented set, you might just want to take your damage and get some momentum that way. But he just went straight Heatran, and Crucify went for U-turn. Can't really tell what that Jirachi is off the 2%. Would have been more indicative to figure out what it was, but maybe it's some sort of scarf set, because usually you're not seeing U-turn on a Jirachi lead outside of Choice Scarf. Maybe the weird like Stealth Rock Iron Head Body Slam U-turn, but I don't think U-turn would have been clicked straight off, so I'm going to assume that that's a Choice Scarf Jirachi, and Crucify got the advantage, and Tyranitar into Heatran. Heatran probably wants to get out of there, so let's see what happens.
Yeah, absolutely. The fear of superpower is going to be pretty great. Just goes for Will-O-Wisp, actually.
Yeah, some people are using that more often. I mean, clearly that's a very clutch move. You can see that did 57. That superpower would have KO'd, but a little risky. I mean, in DPP, Will-O-Wisp is 75% accuracy. So these kind of strategies, at least I feel like, can be kind of inconsistent, because if Will-O-Wisp misses, then you've lost Heatran for nothing. But it's a really nice tool if it hits to hit, Tyranitar and some other ground types like Hippowdon can set up for like Combine Jirachi, for example, Dragon Dance Tyranitar, maybe like Metagross. It's always been kind of weird for me to be like, okay, why do I want to sacrifice something like Stealth Rocks or Earth Power or Explosion on my Heatran to use Will-O-Wisp? But maybe it's setting up for some sort of special Combine Sweeper or, one of the sweepers I mentioned. So either way, it worked out for Groudon. He got the burn on Tyranitar and managed to survive. Not only will he survive this superpower, but he's also going to survive another superpower if he attempts it. So, I mean, that's getting a lot of momentum on Groudon's side. That's a pretty good turn for him.
Potentially Heatran with like an Iron Head set, right? Would kind of threaten the Tyranitar, right?
Oh, certainly. Although Iron Head Heatran, I would say, is extremely uncommon. I mean, we've seen it a couple times in the past 1 to 2 years. Usually a bit more offensive leaning with like Iron Head, Payback, Explosion, and Fire Blast, where it's got like 3 physical attacks and then strong fire move. I think we've seen a couple very interesting players using that. It's very much uncommon, though, and not the standard. So I would say that Tyranitar is not exactly threatened in the sense that maybe Heatran has Earth Power, but usually when they use Will-O-Wisp, they kind of drop Earth Power. It's probably like Stealth Rock, Fire Move, Will-O-Wisp, Boom. That would be my guess, although can be some weird set. I don't really know, but I don't think Tyranitar has a lot of incentive to switch out. I would just assume Crucify is going to go for further damage. Groudon probably will either set up rocks or switch out himself. Maybe Crucify doesn't want to lose momentum by attacking, so he's going to find some mid-ground into Heatran, but it's a little risky with Boom, so I think Crucify probably will stay in here, and Groudon's either going to set up Stealth Rock or switch to something like maybe that Kingdra to try to get some momentum that way. Yeah, Kingdra's pretty free. Kingdra's got some decent bulk, and that superpower, which is probably Choice Band if I were to guess. I mean, that's a -1 attack burned superpower doing 26% to Kingdra. So I'm assuming that's a Choice Band Tyranitar from Crucify's end. And we see a lot of these Scarf Jirachi lead Choice Band Tyranitar teams that have like Starmie, Spinner, and Zapdos and Breloom. So it seems like a team that might be oriented towards, breaking, balanced team oriented towards stall breaking, with tools for long-term gains and early game disruption against defensive strategies. So Crucify looks like he went to Jirachi, which is an interesting pivot into this Kingdra, because usually you'd want to have some sort of water move switch in when you have Tyranitar, and Jirachi probably doesn't want to take a Hydro Pump. Maybe Crucify's trying to read some sort of dragon move, like let's just say Groudon wanted to read the Starmie or Latias coming in, he might click Draco Meteor. So I think Crucify went to Jirachi here as an attempted mid-ground. It's probably Scarf, so it can outspeed this Kingdra, even if it uses Dragon Dance. So it might be a really smart play, but if he takes a Hydro Pump, that might be a bit unpleasant. But either way, he'll get some information on what this Kingdra is, because it hasn't been revealed yet, and that'll really help Crucify to, play around it for the next couple turns.
Yep, and it does, in fact, click that Draco Meteor that...
That's a lot of damage. That's Specs. And that was, yeah, exactly. That ended up being a very smart mid-ground by Crucify to cover the Draco Meteor, which was, a pretty fine play by Groudon just to cover in case he went for Starmie or Lottie. I mean, that could have gotten him a ton of mileage, but Crucify was one step ahead there. And it looks like Crucify could U-turn here pretty freely and get some more momentum.
And I fully expect him to.
Yeah, Groudon probably going to go Heatran again, I guess.
Yes, indeed. And there's the U-turn. Going to see Latias come in this time, threatening the Heatran with the Surf.
Yeah, definitely. It definitely is going to threaten with the Surf. You wouldn't really want to have Latias do a kill here, because if it does that, then then Tyranitar can come in and trap it. Crucify must be pretty confident that either A, Groudon does not have Tyranitar, or B, Groudon's going to have not the easiest time wanting to trap like a Specs Surf Lottie. So I would say that is definitely the threat here, and Groudon's either going to sacrifice this or try to play really aggressively and throw his Kingdra in. but even I wouldn't think that. I think the Heatran is the least valuable thing that he's got here. So either he's got a really good Latias switch, like some sort of specially defensive, like Empoleon or Metagross or something like that, or his own Jirachi, or he's just going to sack Heatran here. But if it's got a Rocks, then he probably wants to keep it. So we'll see what he's got going on.
And he does switch it out to the Kingdra, which that does not look like specs damage. I mean, I know it's 4 times resisted, but...
Yep, and you were absolutely right. Yeah, 7% is pretty bad damage, so it clearly wasn't specs. I don't think that Groudon should have left the Kingdra in after seeing that Surf. I mean, yeah, I don't know why he left that in, obviously, as we saw, but now Crucify is going to be able to pick up a nice quick kill. Clearly, it was going to be tough for Crucify to switch around this Kingdra, and now it's gone, so that's a very advantageous turn for Crucify.
Yep, Kingdra's gone. Looked kind of like a threat. I mean, if Latias was going to be the best switch into it. Here is the Metagross, which probably should have...
That would have been a nice mid-ground. Yeah. That would have been the better play for sure, because he's not going to serve Kingdra again, and clearly it wasn't specs. So maybe Groudon felt pressure by his timer. You know, oftentimes you'll see these players be out low on time and try to rush their plays just to not run out of time. Oftentimes you'll see that, yeah, the players will just be really low on time and feel pressure to keep up, and they won't think through everything. Metagross definitely would have been a very solid play after Kingdra as a nice mid-ground there. But yeah, he sacrificed Kingdra, which seems to have put him more behind than he needed to be.
Yeah, and beating down these steals is going to be Crucify's main goal now, because Latias usually tends to go in after those steals are gone, right? So.
Yeah, absolutely. And Heatran's pretty low. And additionally, you've got, Jirachi, Tyranitar, Latias, and Metagross is kind of threatening to Latias structures generally, because obviously it walls Latias pretty well. But also, Latias teams don't usually pack the most secure Metagross checks defensively. So they will come with like Gyarados to pair with Latias, and they'll come with maybe Rotom to pair with Latias as like second fighting resist that can do decently against Metagross. But we'll see what Crucify's got here. I mean, he's going to have to switch into something, maybe a fire type like Heatran he's got in the back to aggressively switch into Meteor Mash. Maybe this is going to be a Stealth Rock Metagross. Kind of unknown because the Heatran only revealed Will-O-Wisp, and the Metagross, if it's like an agility set, probably is not going to come out till later. So if I were to guess, it's some sort of utility like Trick Iron Ball or Stealth Rock or something, since I feel like Groudon would have upped with Heatran if he had it. So I think we're going to see Crucify switch and to try to get some more offensive tempo. We're going to see Groudon use Stealth Rock or Meteor Mash.
Oh, whoa, wow.
Oh.
Well, maybe not.
That is, that's a lot of damage. Pursuit Metagross is very uncommon. Usually you'll see something like Tyranitar use Pursuit, which is way stronger, or Scizor will use Pursuit, which is not only stronger, but also Technician boosted. Pursuit Metagross is just not that common, and clearly it did not do that much damage to Lottie. I mean, Lottie is still decently, is able to come in and probably do something again, 65%. I mean, we don't know the EVs on this stuff, but that's not great damage. But hey, I mean, that's chip. That's pretty valuable. And now Donphan is in, which is pretty strange on a structure like this, I think. I mean, we would expect something like Gyarados to pair with Donphan, because, Donphan has that electric immunity that Gyarados, and the rock resistance, so it has nice typing complements with Gyarados. I'm assuming that's why you use Donphan, to spin for something that is Rock's weak on an offensive team, but at the same time, maybe he just really wants to spin those spikes away. But I would guess that a Gyarados is in the back for Crucify, and maybe something like a second steal like Empoleon or Heatran would be back there, or it's like a one-steal team. Kind of hard to tell. Could be a lot of different lasts for Crucify, but Donphan looks like the pressuring for the Metagross, so I'm assuming that it's probably not a Heatran because of that, because I think that if it were Heatran, Crucify would have gone into it in this turn, so it's probably going to be something else. So this is his best bet here. Metagross can maybe just explode and remove Donphan outright and trade, but I feel like Groudon clearly has only shown grounded Pokemon, so he's definitely got some ground immunes up his sleeve here, so probably can just go to those now.
Yeah, I would expect that to happen, and it does in fact. Latias comes in on the Stealth Rock.
Yeah, that makes sense. Stealth Rock Donphan isn't the most common thing, but it definitely exists, and it's fine. It's not the best Stealth Rocker in my opinion, because Starmie can spin away pretty easily, but with Tyranitar support or Ghost support or whatever, works fine. I feel like other moves can be better used on Donphan, but it works, and clearly he's got the initiative here. Didn't bother wasting his time clicking Earthquake on the Metagross. No fear. Just got him up, and now Latias is in. But Crucify's got a Jirachi and a Burn Tyranitar that he can throw into Latias pretty easily. Not going to lose too much, especially since he's already ahead because of those earlier turns.
Yeah, I kind of expect the Jirachi. It's kind of low-ish, and even if it does go down to like a crit or something, then you can trap with Tyranitar and at least force some damage. So this Latias does look quite threatening to Crucify's structure, if I had to guess.
Yeah, definitely so far with Jirachi and Tyranitar both chipped. You could also throw Tyranitar into a Draco, have it survive, and then Healing Wish it later, just as a mid-ground, because maybe he wants to conserve the Jirachi's health, but clearly Crucify is going to go into one of the two unless he's got another steal that's also good against Latias, but probably not at this rate.
Yeah, I don't expect it, but we'll see what Crucify decides to do. Does go to that Jirachi on the Surf.
A lot of damage on that Surf. That could be Specs Lati, although it'll be double Specs, both Specs Kingdra and Specs Latias, which usually you don't overload on Choice Mons unless you are targeting some very specific stuff, but I would just assume here that, yeah, 46% on a Surf is clearly Specs damage, and I'm pretty certain that this Jirachi is Scarfed by the looks of it, so he's gonna have to switch out to probably Metagross or Heatran here, and Jirachi's probably gonna U-turn again and get some more momentum.
Yeah, fully expect that as well. There's the Metagross, and no, just a swap. Maybe respecting the possibility of Scarf Lati.
I wouldn't think so, because 46% is not coming from Scarf Lati, not to mention Scarf Lati doesn't use Surf. That probably just means Crucify is not Scarf Jirachi. I don't know why he switched there. It's either not Scarf Jirachi or he switched for some weird reason, but there's another Kingdra, so both of them are using Kingdra, and we can assume this is some sort of Specs Kingdra too. I can understand the Donphan Kingdra pairing. Kingdra hates hazards, all of them, and Donphan can spin, and you can use Kingdra in a slightly more long-term balanced way. Clearly, Kingdra is a decent breaker because Lati is often one of the only water resists, if not the only one on defensive structures, and Kingdra can blast through Lati with Draco Meteor. So it's a pretty respectable breaker in that sense, and he's got some nice tempo because a Specs Hydro Pump from Kingdra is going to do a ton to Metagross. I'm going to take the guess that this Metagross has got some bulky investment as some sort of like bulky offensive team structure that Groudon has here. I don't think it's like a frailer Metagross with agility. So I think it'll be able to take a Hydro Pump, but it's going to have to pay the price. I mean, Groudon might want to go to Lati here and try to get some action going, but this is not a great position for Groudon.
Yeah, and do you have any opinion on I feel like Kingdra has been in a lot of these SPL games this season. I did not see it at all last season, really. A couple times, I think, but not to the level that we're seeing it. I mean, we're only in week 3 of SPL, and I've seen it like 5 times, 6 times.
Yeah, it'd be really interesting to see the usage stats, like comparing Kingdra's usage now to the entirety of last SPL. It probably would be pretty close. I'm pretty surprised, honestly, by all the Kingdras we're seeing too. I mean, I'm going to be honest, I'm not a big fan of Kingdra. I haven't really used Kingdra in tournament in a very long time, since like the days when Rain was viable, which has been a long time coming, probably several years since I've used a Kingdra personally. I also feel like in DPP, you've got Pokemon like Tyranitar, and then you've got your steals and your fighting resists, and then you've got kind of that filler that typically goes in the most conventional structures. And Kingdra is just, it gets hit by sand, it's weak to Stealth Rock, weak to spikes, weak to toxic spikes. Not the fastest Pokemon, not the strongest Pokemon output-wise, just with like base 95 stats across the board. It's got that really unique typing and that Water Dragon combination that's only resisted by Empoleon, and it can kind of barely muscle through Clefable. Maybe with some support, it can work. I mean, clearly a lot of people are liking Kingdra. I don't really know. I mean, I think honestly, my hunch is that it's just kind of random, that just like the pool kind of is liking offensive teams and just happens to be building with Kingdra. I think it's kind of just some kind of coincidence, because I don't think anything has specifically happened to make Kingdra more viable. I mean, I'm also biased because it's just not really to my tastes, but I understand that there are players out there who like it, and offensive players like, I guess, Crucify and Groudon in this case. Groudon is also supported by a DPP player known as Student of Sinnoh, who loves his offensive waters like Kingdra. He's always been a big Kingdra fan. So I'm not surprised to see Groudon bring it. And I think Crucify, maybe he brought it because BKC brought it against him in the first week, and it put in a lot of work. So maybe he got inspired by that. But yeah, to sum it all up, that was a pretty long-winded response to me basically being like, yeah, you're right. Like, people are bringing Kingdra a lot. I don't really understand why. I think it's just kind of random, but maybe other people are seeing things that I don't, but it's just not really my style.
Yeah, I was just curious, if you had any inkling. But sometimes, yeah, it might just be a random thing, or these players favoring offenses. Definitely, I think Groudon brought offense all 3 weeks, right? So
yeah, so did Crucify, kind of. I mean, yeah, it's a really good question because I've been thinking about that myself, and people have remarked on it, and I'm just like, that's kind of interesting, Maybe it's been 4 or 5, maybe even 6 Kingdras, and it's only week 3. It's a lot of Kingdra.
Let's see how this turn goes. I don't expect the Metagross is faster.
That's a Scarf Metagross. Oh my god. Okay.
And a
okay. Wow.
Specs?
Yes, that's Specs Kingdra for sure. That's a Scarf Metagross, which is interesting. Clearly, because Groudon has Specs Lottie, he needs some sort of speed control, and I guess Scarf Metagross is a speed control. It's a little slow. I mean, it's just barely faster than the 3 Dragon Dance Pokemon. It's also the same speed as Magneton, so yeah, that is an interesting choice. I mean, maybe a lot of people will use like mixed Flygon with Scarf Metagross because they're giving up some sort of Pokemon that's usually Scarf, like Latias, Rotom, Flygon, and then they're using Metagross as their Scarfer instead. It's a decent Scarfer, not that bad into like Tyranitar because of its superior physical bulk, but clearly that Hydro Pump is Specs damage, and Metagross dying in 1 hit is not the most common sight. So yeah, maybe Kingdra's the play.
It sure seems to be putting up work on either side. Well, maybe not this one, but still, it definitely seems to be doing something. So,
and that one could have gotten more mileage out of that one. Crucify just kind of played better, and then we have Gengar, which is interesting here. You're either going to see, so you've got your 2 Steels, your 2 Fighting Resist, Elite Kingdra. So Groudon's last is either going to be a Tyranitar or some sort of other random filler. I would assume it might be, it would be interesting to be like Suicune or something like that, like Double Water, Swampert maybe, because he hasn't gotten Stealth Rocks up yet. Clearly Metagross wasn't, so if it's not Heatran, then it's probably something else, and Swampert could fit the bill. Has some nice defensive utility being like a ground type there for electrics and whatnot. But Gengar is a decent pairing, that second Fighting Resist for Lottie. Could just be Stealth Rock Heatran, obviously, like I said. And I'm pretty sure that Kingdra will probably drop to a Shadow Ball, especially if Groudon is sending it out here. So Crucify probably is going to try to save Kingdra, if I were to guess. He's got some, burn Tyranitar and stuff like that. But then again, Kingdra's pretty low, so maybe he'll just sack it here. But either way, Crucify is really ahead. And in these offensive matchups, it's only been 13 turns, but honestly, Groudon has either been outplayed or just kind of made some small suboptimal plays in this match. He just hasn't really been able to do much, and he's pretty behind.
Yeah, definitely. Really quick, for some reason in my head, the first thing that I thought of for this last Pokemon was Breloom. Does Breloom fit at all on this structure?
I think so. I think that what made me think maybe not Breloom is that he's got that Scarf Metagross checking Dragon Dance Tyranitar already. It would certainly fit. It would help with like ground immunity, or not ground immunity, ground resist, and electric resist as well. It would definitely fit. It's definitely an option, but he's got some holes that he might need to patch up, and I was thinking that Swampert would patch them up a little better defensively than something like Breloom. Granted, it's definitely a possible last, especially combining with Lottie and Heatran, and those are just classic Breloom combos. Breloom plus Gengar to overwhelm stall. That could definitely be it. But honestly, at this rate, usually you get a good sense, but it's kind of random. It's kind of hard to know, especially because that Metagross is Pursuit. So maybe it's enabling some sort of Tyranitar that's not Pursuit, but maybe it's just because he doesn't have a Tyranitar and he wants a Pursuit Trapper for some reason. So in that vein, Breloom could definitely fit because Breloom really wants a Pursuit Trapper for something like Latias. So I think that would be definitely a feasible ask for him.
I'm glad to see I'm not completely off the mark, but we'll see what it is. Jirachi's going to be the sack. That kind of makes sense. 13% and probably not Scarfed, as you said. So...
there's the Scarfer.
Yeah. Rotom Heat coming in. And honestly looks quite threatening into this whole team. Presumably Heatran will be sacked off?
Yeah, I think that Heatran's also in Shadow Ball range, so it's a pretty free click unless Groudon's got Tyranitar back there, but it's probably not going to be Pursuit Tyranitar, even if he's got it, because that Metagross revealed Pursuit. So even if it's Tyranitar, I'm pretty sure Crucify can click Shadow Ball for free here. It doesn't really matter very much. It's a really great position for him. And Crucify's team is pretty interesting. He's clearly got the Rotom and Kingdra and Donphan last, which are all pretty decent against Metagross. So making up for the fact that you don't have like a Gyarados, probably some sort of, well, I guess he already Stealth Rock with Donphan. I'm really not sure what that Jirachi was. Some weird set. But either way, the Scarf Rotom is patching things up decently here with that Donphan in the back to help against Dragon Dance Tyranitar, which Rotom covers Gyarados and Dragonite really well because Dragonite can't E-speed it, and Gyarados just gets outsped and then dies to Thunderbolt. So Donphan is a nice core with this Rotom. Crucify's team is pretty unique. We haven't seen this 6 before, but I can see it working. He's got the Jirachi and Tyranitar for like the Latias and stuff. He's got the Latias and Rotom fighting resist defensive core, which is pretty decent. He's got Donphan to control the hazards for Kingdra to break. All in all, seems like a pretty decent kind of balanced defensive team from Crucify, and he's been able to pilot it very effectively this match, getting a lot of advantage over Groudon in a matchup that isn't necessarily favored for him. I mean, Groudon's Kingdra could have put in major work here. Additionally, he had that Will-O-Wisp Heatran to neuter the Tyranitar with a Specs Latias and to just only steal Jirachi, and that Jirachi already had to put in overtime to, pivot into Kingdra. So I think Groudon with his dual Dragon Specs core could have put in a lot of work, but I honestly just think Crucify has played really heads up this match. And you can see in just these 13 turns how every turn, especially in an offense versus offense match, matters so much positionally.
I want to see if potentially it is Breloom last. I know it probably isn't now, but yeah, Heatran's going to be sacked off to the Shadow Ball.
Yeah.
Oh, it does survive, actually. That's kind of...
Cust-Up Berry, maybe? Oh, he's scouting Cust-Up. That's awesome. Yeah, that was smart. If it were Cust-Up Berry Heatran, then that Rotom was gonna not get knocked out. So he's just sacking Lottie and making sure, covering his ground.
Was not Cust-Up.
Yeah, but hey, Crucify felt confident enough. He's ahead, and he can get Rotom in with a refreshed. Gengar is not exactly what you want it to go there, but maybe he's just got no options. I mean, is this last just like terrible against Rotom? I wouldn't have gone Gengar there, I don't think. But I mean, look at Groudon's timer. He had 10 seconds to make a decision, and usually when you see the 10 seconds, you want to click immediately. So probably not the best send in for Groudon, but it's looking pretty rough anyway if that's what he did in the first place. So it probably didn't matter.
Yeah, we're gonna now see if Groudon has a switch in. Otherwise, it might be the game over. I mean, yeah, no, Gengar just goes down.
Wow.
And it was Tyranitar.
Oh, what? Okay. This must be Dragon Dance Tyranitar then. Yeah, okay. So if for some reason, hold up, this could change real quick. I mean, if this is Shuckleberry Tyranitar and it's able to take a Donphan Earthquake and it's able to, maybe the Donphan doesn't have Ice Shard and it's able to take the Scarf Rotom Thunderbolt. I mean, if he saved this Tyranitar all this time and sacked all that material to Rotom, I mean, maybe he could do something here. Maybe this Tyranitar might actually win.
It's entirely possible. I think that maybe there's just too much left, needing to two-hit KO the Donphan, plus not have the Ice Shard, plus live the Rotom Thunderbolt. I think that might be too much, but we'll definitely see here shortly. Aqua Tail.
Okay, that is going to give him the bump that he... Oh, that's not Shuckleberry. Yeah, this is over.
Yeah, never mind.
Yeah, I mean, look at this team. It's pretty weak to ground types, if you ask me, in that sense. And there's the Ice Shard. Didn't even 1v1 the Donphan. Yeah, this is game
rough.
Over. The Ice Shard and the Shadow Ball from Rotom are gonna lock this in. Groudon probably forfeits here. This one's done.
Yep,
there's the GG from Groudon.
Yep. Wrapped.
Yeah. Crucify brought a really interesting team, and he played really well and didn't let Groudon get any momentum, made really smart mid-grounds, capitalized on some suboptimal plays on Groudon's end. Groudon's team was pretty interesting, had the Pursuit Metagross to enable the Tyranitar to not use Pursuit, had 2 Specs Dragons to overload with Draco Meteor, a Gengar to break stall, and a Stealth Rock Will-O-Wisp Heatran to help facilitate that Specs Latias to its potential. I mean, it definitely had some interesting synergies, and I think that matchup-wise, they were pretty even here, if you ask me. I mean, both have strong tools to win. I mean, Rotom is looking menacing. Metagross is probably not going to trap Met Rotom that well. So I would say that their matchup was probably around even. I think either player could have won, but at the end of the day, Crucify made all the correct plays and got some momentum off the lead matchup. Groudon probably, in hindsight, should have just attacked the Jirachi early. He probably should have not sacked his Kingdra to Latios. He probably should have just gone Metagross at that time. He probably should have tried to get Stealth Rocks up when he could with Heatran. But ultimately, I think that Groudon just had a very offensive team and kind of didn't play it offensively enough. And Crucify kind of caught him, was making plays to really progress the game on every single turn with really crucial mid-grounds. And he just didn't let Groudon breathe and kind of ran him over. So I thought it was a really interesting match that shows two very unique teams that we haven't really seen in DPP, some really interesting team building intricacies. And I think that it was a really good offense versus offense, show you that every turn matters and that the player who really plays proactively to advance the game, even when they're, not behind and they're just trying to maintain their momentum as much as possible, can go such a long way. And it really did in this match. It was a really interesting game.
Yeah, and one thing that sticks out to me is that Crucify's team does not scream like hyper offense. It screams more like a bulky offense structure, right? And Groudon's is just straight hyper offense, to me at least. And the fact that
Groudon's team is more aggressive. Sorry, go on.
Just capping that thought off is that Crucify's team was on the offensive pretty much the whole time. I mean, like, it was maintaining the momentum a lot, whereas Groudon's hyper offense, I felt, lost that early Kingdra, right? Tried to make the aggressive double in the early game as well. I think it made two of them, right, with the Metagross coming in on the Kingdra double. But in the end, like, I'm just surprised to see hyper offense not be able to make those moves to, like, going to the Tyranitar early on the Rotom and potentially making it think that it's pursuit. Instead of using the Metagross for that. It's an interesting way for it to play out, to see the bulky offense, I think, out-offense the hyper-offense, to me at least.
Yeah, definitely. That's definitely a smart way to think about it because, Groudon's team is just a more aggressively built one than Crucify's, but Groudon just didn't play it aggressively, whereas Crucify played his aggressively. I mean, you'll even see these players using very defensive teams and play them really aggressively, and use their defensive attributes to still play proactively and make progress in the game. I just think that, to put it simply, Crucify was just the better player in this specific match, and maybe Groudon didn't have enough practice with this team. It's definitely a weird one with the Pursuit Metagross, and the structure is just kind of odd. Maybe he just didn't feel confident with that Kingdra lead, which slower than Jirachi. Maybe he just got kind of playing on the back foot, trying not to lose momentum early. But, when you build like this and you've got a Kingdra lead, like, you've got to send it, man. You've just got to go for it, I feel like, in as much as you can, or else you're going to be on the back foot and it's going to kind of be hard with the more frail offensive structure to kind of come back in the game.
Well, thank you, Excal, for providing your insight on this game. I really appreciate it. Listening to your point of view on this stuff, it's incredibly fascinating.
Absolutely. Really appreciate that, and thank you so much for doing this.
Absolutely. Thank you, everybody, for joining us. This has been Gold Mason and Excal, commentating the Week 3 set between Groudon and Crucify. We will see you next time.